All right, we live. Sorry, I didn't give a warning for everybody to smile. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining this evening. It's 7 p.m. in South Africa. In Washington, D.C., it's 1 p.m. And in California, it's 10 a.m. in the morning. So thank you very much for making this time, this very special time to join us for this very important, episode, but more like a segment that is so key to perhaps us as Africans, mainly because we have been asking a lot of questions about what's happening in the US currently over the past week. I think it's now day 8, if I'm not mistaken, of just protests that's currently happening based on the Floyd murder that took place a week ago. So allow me to please introduce the guests that I have so we can be able to engage them. I have Rochelle Davidson Mhonde, who is a mother, a health communication researcher, and a PhD student. Rochelle, thank you for making this time. I know you're very passionate about a number of issues, and I am hoping that you'll be able to touch base on a lot of those somehow tonight, and people can be able to have some form of education, awareness, and alertness of some sort. My next guest is Derrick. Derrick is from California. Derrick is a visual art educator, a mentor for young people, and he's also a creative. He does amazing work with his hands and paintings, and I always follow his stuff on Facebook. And again, he will touch a little bit later on the show about some of his inspiration in that regard. And then I have a Gen Z, one of my favorite Gen Zs, Maïgane Diop. Maïgane is a PhD student, and she's a singer and writer. And I must say that Maïgane just released her album, I think a few days ago, if I'm not mistaken. She plays a remarkable, she's quite talented with the guitar, and she's quite passionate with singing and has the most incredible voice I think I've ever heard. You should also follow her on Instagram, where she does her videos for music. It's amazing stuff. And it's interesting because Maïgane is joining us because her perspective is rather unique and quite special because, like I say, we always hear from millennials, which is great. This platform on its own is specifically for millennials. But I like the fact that, as a Gen Z, she's as affected and has so much to say about what's currently happening. And it's a great privilege to actually have her here and bring in the voice. And another sister I have that's joined us today, Jowhari Trahan. Last time I saw you, you were doing remarkable work back here at home in Johannesburg, South Africa. So thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for having
hoping
me.
to also tap your mind and shoo, yeah. So, I mean, I'm not gonna waste any more time. I just want to give context to tonight's conversation, or on your side this morning or this afternoon. So much is happening in America right now. And a lot of what is happening, of course, from our side, we see from just breaking news and Twitter hashtags and social media. And we are touched, we are worried, we are standing in solidarity, we are, asking so many questions, and we figured that in this platform, because we speak to millennials in Africa who are quite passionate about Black people in America, that we perhaps bring you all here today so we can get to ask some of the questions that they've put forth to help them understand what is going on, so that even when someone is protesting, by the way, there's quite a lot of people back here at home who are standing in solidarity with what's happening in the US. In fact, there's actually even protests happening across in some parts of Johannesburg in light of what is happening in the US. So solidarity, global solidarity is certainly, quite strong and pretty solid. And I hope that today we'll be able to at least bring some context to it. So first things first, let me ask this question. In light of what has happened in this past week and what is still currently going on, how do you guys feel? And I'm going to start off with Jowhari. So how does it feel to be a Black person in America right now, right this moment, in this particular week? Where's your headspace and how you feel?
It's scary. It's scary not knowing. Being a single mother, and I have boys. I have 2, 25 and 13. It's very scary because how do you prepare them for this? How do I prepare myself for this? Right? So To operate to operate fearlessly in fear is one of those things where, you know, you have to keep moving. We have to keep pushing, but I do have to still make certain that we're in the proper regard, whatever that is, because we don't know how to define it. Because what's the definition when you're wrong for being Black? Sometimes 10 years ago, it was driving while Black. That was the issue. So now it's just being Black, right? And so that's a different level of things. That's a different way to process things, because you know, my education doesn't matter right now anymore. The fact that I'm a woman doesn't matter. The fact that I am a mother doesn't matter. That I have children doesn't matter. That my boys are boys and they're Black doesn't matter, because you're Black at this point.
Yeah, sure. What a spotlight on that word. I mean, it's not just a word. To us, it is a sense of being, a sense of personhood. We Black people. Rochelle, where is your headspace, particularly this week? How does it feel for you to be Black in America this week?
So this week, I feel like the world is seeing what we kind of deal with every day. There's a collective experience happening right now, but every day in this country, we face some sort of racism, whether it's microaggressions at work or at our kids' school. I'm a mother of 3, I have 2 school-aged boys, and I've had to already deal with this idea of assumed guilt because of a Black body with my 8-year-olds. And so George Floyd's death, the tragedy of it, the trauma of it, has just awakened all this racial trauma that we maybe have become accustomed to. And so I feel like what's happening with Black people in the country and across the world and other people that are in solidarity with us is it's triggering, right? It's triggering all these things that we have kind of just been living with while Black. And so many of us were not even aware that we were in pain because of what we deal with at work, of that second guessing, of that extra person to look over your work before you submit it, of that, you're wondering whether your teacher is responding to you that way because of the color of your skin or because you just saw her respond to someone else, so these things that we do of questioning ourselves, that is a result of racial trauma. And so what has happened with George Floyd's death, that has been awakened. And so what the world is seeing is that people are responding to all of this trauma that we have endured in our own personal lives, but as a history, right? As a history of Black people in this country, we have not really been able to heal because our pain has never really been addressed, but even acknowledged.
Yeah.
So many times we're told that it's not a race issue. And so that constant denialism of racism in this country, now we're realizing, oh wait, we can't deny this anymore. So now my white friends and family members are like, wow, I'm really praying for you this week. I know you're going through a lot. You have Black boys. And while I appreciate their sympathy and I appreciate their compassion, in my mind, I'm like, well, I deal with this a lot. I deal with this every day. How I choose the schools my kids go to, how we choose where to live, how we choose where to take our kids just to have a good time so that we won't be bothered by people who look at our kids as some kind of troublemakers.
Sure. That's a lot. That's a lot. And we're going to get a little bit deeper into your experience as well as a mom raising boys. And I mean, Jowhari, you too as well have some elements to share in that regard, but allow me to introduce Maïgane now. Maïgane, your post was one of the first posts I saw, I think on the day that, George Floyd's death happened, when you were talking about just the discomfort of driving and having a police car behind you for no reason, not that you've done anything wrong, they're probably not even coming to stop you. You just happen to be on the same road, but that reality, is just discomfort. So how does it feel for you to be Black in America at this point, in this week?
Yeah, I think it's, always important to acknowledge that at this time, all Black people are different and have different needs at this time. Some people want their coworkers to check in with them. Some people feel like responding to their coworkers is a drain on their own energy. There's this feeling that like somehow we're also responsible for educating the non-Black people that are in our lives. So that's a pressure as well. There's a lot of, gatekeeping going on and what is an appropriate way to respond to this. It's like, I think in summary, this is extremely heavy. And just what I wrote about on Facebook, I mean, it was a cop just behind my car running my tags because they periodically do that where I live. And just, that pressure is something that, really, permeates throughout every part of a Black person's life, where as Rochelle was mentioning, you're always, questioning the microaggressions that happen to you on a daily basis. And it's heavy to know that you're being wronged and wonder, like, is it because of my race, when people are so quickly to deny it? So, and we're living in a time where, you can't go online right now without, seeing horrible videos of Black people being murdered by police. You can't go online without having to face, I'm Black and this person wants me to know that that they support me, or they're rejecting the message that we're putting out, or they're saying all lives matter or blue lives matter. Like, honestly, I would repeat that it's so heavy because we're, as Black people in America, we're, Black Lives Matter has received renewed energy, but it also created like an online space where you can't have peace anymore. And so I've been talking to some of my friends about how like we've had to kind of switch how we, what we do to relax. Because, people my age, sometimes we, go on Facebook or go on Instagram or Twitter to scroll through and laugh and just relax after a long day. But like, now going on the internet is a stress, which are self-care techniques. That it's heavy, but it's something that, posting online and bringing awareness to my own community has been something that I've been valuing a lot recently, because I know that I might be the one person on someone's feed that is speaking out about this issue or challenging them. I might be the one person that people are comfortable talking to about these issues. So again, it's heavy, but trying to navigate how to be active and also how to take care of myself is something that I'm working on right now.
Yeah. That is so key, because sometimes activism takes a lot from self-care. And I mean, I'm hoping we'll have time to get to that. Derrick, sure, I think you are the breaking news of the breaking news in America, because you're a Black man, right? And yeah. I mean, I don't know if I can say that Black men in America are under siege. If they're not forced, incarcerated, taken away from their families, their lives are just taken away. And I mean, how do you feel being a Black man in America this week?
Excuse me if I get emotional, because just listening to y'all, just really put a lot of things into perspective. I never consider myself a threat, and to be looked at as a threat is very hard. It's hard, because I don't know what the future, what's going to happen in the future. I'm tired. I just don't know anymore. Tired of fighting. I'm tired of thinking about it. I have dreams like everybody else do, and you just want to see those dreams come true. So just right now, I'm just listening to what's going on in our country. I'm not happy, but I'm tired, and I get it. We have to say something, and hopefully people listen to what we're saying. I feel like I hold a lot of responsibility, because I'm an educator. I have to teach Black boys, and I have to teach all races, just not Black boys, but how do you educate your kids about this, and then you have a racist that trusted me to be their teacher. So just looking at it from that perspective, it's hard, because I don't know what the future's going to hold. I've been telling my friends that I'm mentally exhausted all week, you know, because just like everybody else, I'm turning on social media, and that continues to be the news feed. Just okay, this, that, you know, police brutality. You know, I try to vent it in my art, just so I can get it out. And you know, I just hope and pray that, you know, there's some justice through all of this, because we got to get back to living, you know, and we got to get back to what's important, and that's taking care of ourselves, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate you doing this, Derrick, as well as everybody else, because we know, I mean, from what each and every one of you have said, one word I picked up was heavy. It is heavy, and there's absolutely no other way to describe or express the word heavy. Heavy is heavy. So we really appreciate the fact that you're choosing to speak to us, so we can also understand your shoes and try to be in them for a bit. Rochelle, I really want to tap into some of the work you do with regards to your research. You do a lot of research work in your field, and you've actually written an article for Psych Central a few days ago, I think on the 20th of June. And in that article, you mentioned that, I quote, from the prickly microaggressions that occur on the playground to the implicit biases disguised as discipline against Black skin that begins in preschool, racism is an illness that our children are exposed to as early as their toddler years. You further go on to say, I'm a mother of 3, 2 young boys and a baby girl. Their joy is important for me to nurture and protect. You further then mention that in a society that often deems Black children as incapable, aggressive, and deviant, you're constantly thinking about how to affirm your children so they can create identities outside racist frames. My question to you is, how do you think we can teach Black children, the art, the gift of resilience, because it's so needed, and also pride, and perhaps give them a sense of comfort, of safety to exist in a society that they too belong to as Black children?
Yeah. Thank you, Derrick, for sharing so openly. And everyone so far, thank you so much. Yeah, Jabu, so I think that resilience is in our DNA. And so it's some of these words that come up, in popular culture, and some of the sort of agendas for resilience and courage, and these are good things, right? But if I look at it through the lens of a Black woman, which I can't do anything but do, right? And I purposefully do that. I don't need to teach my kids resilience. They are resilient because they're Black. They are resilient because they come from ancestors who survived slave trades and who survived colonialism. My husband is Zimbabwean, and so there's trauma in Africa as well, even if there wasn't slavery in Southern Africa, right? So my kids are resilient. We are a resilient people. We can teach other people about how to be resilient. And I'm very passionate about telling my kids that they have it within them already to survive and thrive. They just have to know who they are. And so what I ask people is, who's teaching you your history? Who is teaching you your personal history, your family's history? Who is teaching you your history as Black people and Black people across the world? Because once you learn that history and you continue to learn it, the sense of understanding of really how deeply incredible we are, it will fuel you, and you'll be able to do anything that you need to do in this world. And the work is in the Black parent, right? It's a lot of work for us to seek out the knowledge that is not readily available when you go to Barnes and Nobles, which is like your exclusive books in South Africa, right? So you may not see the books that we need for our kids on those bookshelves. But the good thing about social media now is that we have more access and awareness to these resources than ever before. And so I try to use my platform to to share some of these resources, because I do the research because I don't want anybody else teaching my kids who they are. There was so much unlearning that I had to do, and I'm doing so much relearning now that I'm trying to help my kids learn from a young age who they are, because they're going to need it to get through. As much as we're fighting against racial injustice now, we're on Earth. And so I believe that this is a fight that will go on for a long time, but it doesn't mean that we fight without tools, right? We need to be informed. We need to have the resources.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you certainly have to equip them just to even exist in the world, and let alone exist as Black people in America or just anywhere in the world, which is a constant challenge. You know, it goes beyond even in the US. Blackness is an issue, and it shouldn't be an issue. And, you know, hopefully before we, close off, we'll get to the reason why Blackness should be no imposition at all to life. Maïgane, I keep saying this. I firstly, because I really do enjoy it, but I think it's important to highlight you're a Gen Z. And I read somewhere that 1 in 10 eligible voters in the 2020 electorate will be part of a new generation of Americans, Gen Z, right? So often your cohort is known for the power of influence. It's also known to be representing the leading edge of the country's changing racial sort of ethnic makeup. In essence, you are positioned to be more racially and ethnically diverse than previous generations. You also shared a heartbreaking reality as well, as I mentioned when I introduced you, about when you were driving. This was your real life just a few days ago. My question to you is, what would you say needs to be done as a Gen Z to change this reality and perception towards Black people, Black young people of your generation in your country?
It's a very big question, and it's big because I mean, what the situation with being Black in America is so historically deep. I mean, as an aside, for example, when Black and Latino children enter kindergarten, there is already an achievement gap, and where we see differences in test scores between white children and children of color, specifically Black children and Latino children as well. Like, so even entering kindergarten, they're already at an advantage, and that disadvantage, guides how their teachers interact with them and follows them, leading to differences in high school graduation rates, differences in college graduation rates, differences in employment. There's a wealth gap that has to be addressed. I mean, there's mass incarceration that has to be addressed. It's such a huge problem. And I'm not saying that to say that it's insurmountable, but I'm saying that I can't, tell you in, 30 seconds how it can be solved. But one thing that I feel like my generation is doing an awesome job at doing is realizing how messed up our system is, honestly. We're becoming more aware of how laws have perpetually been involved in oppressing Black people and, stifling development for generation after generation. But I think where we have to grow is also realizing how much our vote counts. So I just became American last August. I'm originally from France. And ever since then, I have just been so incredibly passionate about voting because, I mean, we have the case of George Floyd right now, and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, and name after name after name. These police officers, they were fired. Excellent. One has been indicted. We're waiting for the indictment of the others. But we're seeing that the reason why one of the reasons why this this occurrence continues to happen is because there often is not accountability, and accountability comes from the people that we elect. It comes from the judges that we elect in our counties in America. It comes from the congressmen and women that we vote into office, who are supposed to represent our interests. It comes from the DA, who is sometimes appointed, sometimes voted. It comes from, the funding of our criminal justice system. It comes from the cash bail system that, represses poor people and keeps them in jail because they don't have the cash money to be able to leave jail on bail. Like, there's so many levels of government that allow this to happen. And one major way that we can contribute is by voting for people who match our interests. And so I think one of the most important things that's happening on social media right now is pointing towards our governmental system, our criminal justice system, and becoming more we want to move forward societally, but we can't move forward while our government and our laws allow for continued repression of Black people. So I think Gen Zs are doing a great job of identifying the problems that are in our government, but we have much more to do in terms of getting people to realize how important voting is.
Yeah, absolutely. Jowhari, of course, this is not, one size fits all, but I do want to bring this dynamic that's quite unique when it comes to sort of Black mothers in America. Black kids often are born in a world where perhaps their mothers encompass the quality of caregiver, breadwinner, an economic support, source of support rather, despite these very women in America perhaps being paid less than 1%, as compared to the white man's sort of dollar. If fathers are incarcerated and Black women-led households significantly absorb this burden of financial sort of strain to take care of children and the emotional costs of the sort of partner's absence, these acts of state violence, most often targeting marginalized groups against Black communities in America, are sort of interwoven, right? So what would you say we Black women perhaps need to do to survive this constant end of having to be heroes all the time, because the men are number one targets. If they're not targets, they pretty much non-existent because people kill them. And women have to pretty much stand there and be Black women and mother communities of America. What do you think needs to happen in that regard? What do you think must change?
It depends on which way I choose to go at this, right? So I'm just gonna go across the board and try to hit every point. As a woman myself, I've worked. My first degree is in sociology, so I come from the social services. I've also worked in construction with men, where sometimes I was the only woman on the job. Sometimes I was the one in charge of the job. It depends. And in regards to that, there is an imbalance. I did it because I have boys, and who else is going to teach them hard work? Because it's just me, right? I did it just to see if I could. Let's see if I can make this happen and learn how to lay concrete and build forms and read plans or whatever happens. I learned the difference between a point shovel and a square shovel. I didn't know it was a difference, right? And so, in doing that and having to be in those positions, because I've made choices to do things in regard to my children, right? Because I have to be mom and dad sometimes, or I have to cover both ends. And so in regards to relationships and work ethics and things like that, you have to do what you have to do. As she said, it's not, I come from being resilient. It's me. So as a woman, I'm gonna lead, right? As a woman, I'm gonna be full of emotion, and I'm gonna be stern, and I'm gonna get it together, and I'm gonna hold it together, because for so long we've had to, right? And it's been done. Even in times right now, who's leading the protests? Yeah. Who's in charge of how things are getting done? And it comes from an emotional place, because I watch the news, right? And I see Floyd there. I see him calling for his mother, right? I see that even as a community, we, instead of holding up the phone and recording, we do kind of need to be able to step up for one another and say, hey, he go down, I go down, right? Moving forward, that's the best way to do things. Oh no.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I got a call. Okay.
Sure.
That's the best way to do things.
Yeah.
I think that with the lack of men that we have to hold us up, some have husbands, some have great relationships to work for. I'm blessed to be able to work on one, right, and work with someone, but it's still learning place, and learning how to be a woman, and learning when to be a woman, and learning when to build relationships, even when raising boys. Sometimes for me, it's the most scariest thing. My youngest is 13, so he travels around a lot by himself, and I'm always on the phone. Hey, where are you? Put your pants up. Are you at the bus stop? Are you loud? Do you have both headphones on? And as his mother, out of fear, because he's a big kid. So what happens when someone says something to him and he's only 13, but he looks 16, 17, and he doesn't have a level of understanding?
Yeah.
Right. And then I have a son whose name is in black and white on the newspaper. No one wants that. No one wants that. And it's something that you can't describe. You can't understand, right? Until it happens to you. And no one wants to feel that. I think community-wise, we need to band together more, right? And help. And the men who are here should be an example. Even those who had rough lives, be an example from where they've come. And it helps because you have so many that don't have guidance. I can only provide so much.
Right. Yeah. Derrick, I want to bring you into this conversation. And you know, I mean, America's historical legacy is pretty clear and evident to all, as we all know. Although the Civil Rights Act 1964 outlawed discrimination in employment and banned race-based segregation, as well as sporadic efforts, you know, by successive U.S. governments to tackle racial inequalities, racism still looms large in the 21st century America. As a Black man in America, what would you say America is making inroads into at least, you know, beginning or trying to tackle systematic racism?
Honestly, I don't think that America wants to think that they're tackling it, but we wouldn't be having a conversation right now. I really do believe that, I mean, let's really be real about this, because think about gentrification, how, you know, whites are moving back into the cities and they're pushing like Blacks and people of color to the suburbs. That's a systematic racism. When you talk about education, when we have to take, when kids have to take like proficiency tests, a test, you know, there's a demographic that has to that they try to target, you know, and you have to be very careful about, okay, is this really for everybody or is it not? You know, and I don't even think America even know how to even tackle it, to be honest, because if that was the case, then, you know, we would have resolved this a long time ago. But people feeling or more passionate about it, you know, just people being racist, and they're going to continue to be racist, you know, because that's what they know.
Yeah.
And just the pushback on what Jowhari was saying about, like, you know, men, even damaged men, trying to like be a representative. Maybe they don't know how to be representative because they haven't seen that. So it takes a lot of effort from everybody to like really raise this child. And, you know, I have a lot of kids, you know, that don't have fathers, you know, so they try to be the big brother or the father for their younger brothers and sisters. So that's a lot of weight and responsibility on its own. So yeah. But back to the question, I don't know. I just don't think that it's going to happen.
But Derrick, don't you think that, for instance, there's men who have issues with women and women who have issues with men? The same issue that I may have with the brother over there, he has with me. At some point, we have to learn how to communicate so that moving forward, we can teach children.
I mean, I agree. You do have to learn how to communicate, but if they don't know, if they have not seen that example, then they don't know how to do it. Like, you have to really sit down, and it has to become a habit of how to talk to people and how to communicate to whomever in a respectful manner. You know,
I'm learning it. I'm learning every day.
I guess I actually want to bring in. I actually wanted to perhaps rope in Rochelle on this, just to pick up from what you both have shared in terms of, at some point, all parties learning to, at some point, really find a center, right? And Rochelle, often society feels the need to spearhead inclusivity, and coexistence by insisting on having honest conversations between Black people and white people. Even here in South Africa, believe me, we have the same issue where Black people have to continuously beg for their own space alone to discuss, to heal, to mourn, to protest, or to just have a conversation as Black people. I mean, I want to pose this question to you and ask is it always necessary to include white people in a conversation where Black people should be vulnerable to each other as a people trying to digest and decipher and navigate a system that has constantly been spitting them out?
Good question.
It's not only not necessary to have them there, it can be very problematic to have them there.
Right.
Because we need to talk to each other by ourselves. If they want to watch and be the audience, we can't stop that, right? But we can control who's in the room. We have more power than we think. I mean, look at the forum that you have right now. And we have to talk to each other. I mean, as Jowhari and Derrick were conversing about the differences and the struggles between Black men and Black women, we need to have those conversations by ourselves. It's important for us to understand how the trauma impacts each segment of Black communities, right? How are mothers, how are Black women impacted? How do we feel having to carry this strong Black woman trope every single day? What does that do to our psyche? What does that do to our ability to love? What does that do to our ability to trust one another, right? So when people say, oh, you're guarded, well, there's a history and a legacy of why I may be guarded, right? And what does it do to Black men? My father and I were talking about this over the weekend. He was saying, look, we come from a history where Black men were emasculated by the white master, taking his wife, raping her, getting her pregnant, and then the Black man and the Black woman had to raise this baby that is half slave owner. What does that do to our psyche? What have we inherited as a legacy of racial trauma? And we have to be, before we can go talk to white people and make them feel better and deal with white fragility, we have to deal with each other and have compassion with each other. And then it goes beyond just the male-female. It then goes to the idea of ethnicity and nationality and tribal identity. How do Zulus and Sutus relate to one another? How do Jamaicans and Trinidadians relate to one another? We need time. We need time. We need space to have these conversations. So I am not interested in inviting a white person into this space at this moment. There will be time for that. But a lot of times we jump the gun. And so what happens is a few Black people are in a room with a lot of white people. And then those few Black people are then expected to give the narrative of millions of people over hundreds of years. It's just not fair. It's not fair that we have to be put in those positions. And so I think one of the ways that we have to resist that is to create our own spaces and to have our own forums.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. I mean, look, I think it's important for Black people to be able to be honest with each other first, because we're carrying quite a lot of baggage. And Maïgane, allow me to please ask you this one here, as the youngster in the room, and perhaps just ask this honest question. In terms of portrayal in mainstream media, do you think Black Americans are being depicted properly, appropriately, or even fairly? What is the narrative in your view in that regard?
Oh, well, I mean, it's very clear. Racism is so deep in the psyche of Americans, so incredibly deep. I mean, it's virtually ingrained into us from when we're children. We see cases of successful Black people and we talk about them as though like they're the exception, or the role model that's different from the rest. I mean, America, even aside from Black history, has a very, very long history of glorifying these rags to riches stories that, if you just work hard enough, if you are just savvy enough, you'll be able to reach the status at which people will respect you. And I'm coming from like a perspective of like I'm African and Caribbean and I'm an immigrant, and so we see these same tropes in our communities as well, that you just have to work hard enough, you have to be respectable, and white people will they'll acknowledge you, they'll respect you, you'll gain a high regard. And so that's even a slave mindset. If you just her enough, the master will love you. But that's a whole other situation. But we see that same, you know, portrayal in the media, where we're, you know, people who are radical, people who are pushing the bounds of our society, people who are calling out injustices are, you know, talked about as though they're degenerates, as though they're just, you know, rabble rousers, troublemakers, and people who are, you know, doing the peaceful protests that everybody can ignore are the ones that are glorified, when the people who are actually doing glorifying don't actually care about the cause. So, you know, in America, it's deeply, deeply ingrained to us, and you know, we all have, as Rochelle mentioned, have to do a lot of unlearning growing up in a school system that does not tell us about our history and that warps, you know, even the message of the civil rights movement. We hear about Martin Luther King, and we're living in a time now where people are just, you know, picking this quote here and this quote there, trying to use his message to their end. And we don't learn about what the Black Panthers did in our community. We don't learn about, you know, the impact of Malcolm X. And I'm not sitting here saying that I agree with any one of the three, you know, groups that I talked about completely, but I'm saying that each of them played an important role in getting us to where we are now. And in the media, in our schools, in our history classes, that's not accurately portrayed. So there's, I mean, a lot of conversations that have to happen in terms of, you know, educating ourselves. And I highly advocate for that. Every time I speak out, there's a lot of information out there, both for white people, for Black people, and everybody in between as well, that we have to take responsibility for our own education. We can't have white people, you know, looking towards Black people, expecting them to educate the white people. We can't have, you know, Black people expecting to get real education from America's school system. We have to go out and read those books for yourself and use critical thinking to be able to really understand and integrate the information, to have a better view of what our world looks like now. So are we accurately represented in the media? Absolutely not. But you always have to look further. Nothing is 100% accurately represented in the media. We have to use critical thinking and go and search for our own information. It's out there. We just have to be active and look for it.
Yeah. I think Black people around the world needs to really learn this art of doing things for themselves, educating themselves. And stuff is out there about us that we don't even are not bothered about. So we really need to learn this very fast. Jowhari, you know, when you look at America right now this week, one writer describes it pretty well and says, the murder of George Floyd was a result of inhumane police brutality. It was perpetuated by a culture of white supremacy. It was not a result of a bad apple. It was a predictable consequence of a racist and prejudiced system and culture that has treated Black bodies as the enemy from the beginning. As a mother of boys, how have you navigated whiteness, and how are you trying to help your teenage sons to pretty much just grow up and be Black men in America? What magic are you playing with this difficult task?
It's a tough one, because part of me says, get out there. You got to get out there amongst people and be there and talk to people and be there and network, right? And you are who you are, and stand strong, Black man, and come forward. And then the other part is like, hey, come over here. We don't go over there, right? And so I have to move through it. You know, my son plays baseball, but he also is on the crew team, on the rowing team, and he's the only one, right? And it's kind of like, who's the Black kid? So then I'm offended. What do you mean? Right? But he is the Black kid, and so that Black kid is mine, and he's able to do everything and beyond. I think like I was saying before we were online, being a California kid, we grew up not really seeing racism. Like I grew up in a cultural environment, but you know, you go to school with white kids, you really don't deal with any of the stuff. It's swept under the rug if it does happen. So to be 40 and like, hey, or to deal with it in the workplace, and it's like, what's going on? And having to find my place and be able to articulate myself through it and move forward non-emotionally, because you can't, too much emotion is also not okay. I don't think America's doing a great job. Like, look at the news, right? We're a century ago, technically, with social media and cable. Same thing, same issues, same children, same situations, same men, same women. We're in the same place.
Yeah. Allow me to draw back slowly and get us back to a center as we draw to a close, because I want us to have some key takeaways that will help with the heaviness. Of course, there's absolutely nothing that can be solved now, but this is key. These are seeds that needs to be planted, that people will watch and hear and learn from, or unlearn and take it in. So I want to draw to a conclusion and bring some few sort of wins that we can learn from. And Derrick, I want to come into your world a bit. You have an immense influence in your professional space as an educator, as a creative, to decipher all sorts of Black emotions into beauty. And I'm saying this because you recently shared artwork on Gordon 1863 versus Gordon 2018, one of your Facebook pictures. And I loved your caption in particular. It was saying, it's time to change the narrative. Now, artists have always carried the responsibility of being a test of a conscious, true society, or the conscious of a society. What do you think is the role and space of art in the upbringing of young Black Americans? Because this is what they see and internalize, of course, which often has to be, challenging based on what they see around them.
I think there's not a better time than now to be creative and to get it out there to this world. I think there's a place for social justice art, and what it does is it changes perspective, especially art in general changes perspective, because when you look at music, theater, dance, spoken word, it takes people out of the reality and kind of like, just think it gives them hope. So one thing, like when you take a look at like, Emory Douglas, when he was very active at being, the artist for the Black Panther movement back in the day, that was changing. That was groundbreaking, and people paid attention to the issues that the Black Panther were bringing to the surface. So I think like right now, when we're dealing with the issues of today, it's so important that we shine light in a creative way, and like you want to create the work, you want to create art that will bring a conversation with people, all different types of people, because I think that's when you start to unravel the truth and get to the core of it and be like, okay, so this is what I see from the painting, from the drawing, from the dance, from whatever art form. Okay, what do I need to do to become a better person through all of this? Because I don't care if you are racist, you still want to be a better person. Because there has to be some type of drive, unless you just really just don't know how to seek that. So that's what I try to do with my work, and when I was talking about Gordon, this picture, I never forget, like looking at the picture, like throughout my hip growing up, seeing it in high school and in college, of this slave back, just torn up, and that was like the first time that I just felt uncomfortable. I was like, they really did this to somebody, and I had to create it again. I created it in 2018. That's why I called Gordon 2018, because at the time that's what I was feeling. Like the back is just fragment of like all the things we had to deal with in our life, and we still holding it together. And the reason why I added the flag under Gordon that he's sitting on, because we're dealing with this right now. We're still getting beaten up, but we're still holding it together. We still got families to raise, and we still getting beaten up, and we still holding it together, trying to be strong for everybody. And that's why I did that. And I will continue to create work that will be unapologetic and just hopefully just change perspective.
Yeah.
That's my responsibility.
Yeah. I think we really need that, absolutely, no doubt. Definitely, we have the power to create a new narrative. And I think as an educator, as mentors, everybody here in this meeting has that responsibility to say that it starts with you. The narrative changes here going forward. Rochelle, I quickly want to squeeze this in as we wrap up. In your own independent opinion, how do you feel as a citizen right now in terms of how the current government is challenging and bridging this divide between Black Americans and the rest of society? I mean, are they doing a good job? Would you give them an A+ right now?
The government, what was the, so who is doing a good job?
Do you think the current government is doing a good job of
No.
bridging the gap between the Black Americans?
No, the government is doing a good job of putting white supremacy at the forefront of the news. They're doing a great job with that. And so we have to resist. But the thing is, the agenda of the current administration is very clear. And so there's no ambiguity there. I almost appreciate that, right? Because sometimes there are people that say that they're on your side, but then their actions say otherwise. Yeah. Well, this administration has said that they're not on our side from pretty much day one. And even prior, right? Because the person who is occupying the White House right now was the same person who took out an ad on the exonerated 5 from the New York case, right? That's a decade or more ago. So the who we see and what we see being praised and have a spotlight is at the underbelly of America. We are getting a chance to see exactly how this country was formed and what's happening when people of color are becoming the majority, right? Because there's a serious threat to white supremacists and white nationalism when the population and the numbers begin to change. So if people stay in touch with American politics, they'll understand that what we see happening is not just about Black skin and white skin. It is about upholding a particular kind of ideology, which is white supremacy. And so there's a lot of work to do. But Angela Davis says that you have to act as if it were possible to radically transform the world, and you have to do this every day. And if we go back to the beginning of the conversation around what I want to teach my kids in terms of resilience, it's a resilience to withstand racism. It's a resilience to be courageous enough to speak up and out at the right times, and to have the knowledge and the resources to back that up. And to support other people that are doing the work. We have to do it together. We have to be collective and not feel like we need to carry all of this on our backs. We have to look for solidarity even outside of America. And that's why I appreciate this forum so much, because there is a lot of support for what's happening across the world. And so there is a part of me that feels hopeful that at least this is all being exposed. It's all being exposed, and now we can speak up about it.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for that. Literally just in 30 seconds, 60 seconds, because we've pretty much we're out of time. Maïgane, how do you think, or rather, how are you hoping that young Black people will emerge out of this Black Lives Matter campaign and just the reality of America? What is your vision and your hope? If you were to say a prayer to God, what would you ask him?
I would hope that people are even more aware now of how loud their voices are, how powerful their voices are, and that they should never be silent when they see injustice and they know their voice matters. Yeah. So I hope that people come through with that. I hope that people come through with renewed energy to learn more about the current situation. There's a lot of ignorance out there. And I think, now more than ever, we're being pointed towards these amazing historians and sociologists who have really done the heavy work into identifying, the serious historical inequities that have led us to where we are right now. So I hope there's renewed energy to delve into that literature. And I hope there's renewed energy to vote as well. I keep telling people There's a great energy right now. Please keep it in November. Keep it now during primaries. Keep that same energy in November, because we want the people in our government to represent us, because until, you know, our government changes, we can have lots of conversations, but in reality, there won't be real repercussions, you know, in the real world. So I hope that people come through with renewed energy to vote.
Absolutely. That's where the power is, at the polls. That's where real power lies indeed. Jowhari, in 60 seconds, or probably even less, you're a strong Black woman, you're very expressive, you're a poet, you're an artist yourself, you're a creative. What advice would you give to people in America, especially women, in terms of standing firm in their Blackness despite constant disruptive white fragility?
Ooh. We need to continue to stand strong, reach down on the inside, use our abilities to create, our abilities to articulate, and move forward communities, move forward worlds, right? Because that's what we do and that's who we are. We birth nations, we raise children, daughters, sons, husbands, wives. We become grandparents and godparents, and we should be able to move forward in that. Operate in respect, learn how to effectively communicate, know where the anger is coming from and what it is. Is it the injustice? Is it the social media? Do you feel it on the inside? Let's talk about it so that when we move forward, we know why, right? Mm-hmm. There's so many movements happening in the movement. We don't even know why. Mm-hmm. Some don't know why they're there. They're just there. That's not okay.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, thanks a lot for that. Derrick, your closing remarks. What's your hope for African Americans in the US? And if you were to talk about justice, what would that represent to you as a Black man?
My hope is just really just to be given the same opportunity that everybody else, and not to be looked at as a threat. You know, I want to be celebrated, not beaten. I want to be loved, not torn down. I want to be encouraged and inspired, and not killed. Like, those are things that I think everybody wants to want to have. Like, give me the tool that I can, you know, use to be successful in this world, and not be looked at as for my color. You know, I think there's great pride and responsibility in taking pride for who you are and stuff like that. But at the same time, when you flip it all the way, we all the same person. We're all the same people, you know. And you know, when it comes to justice, let justice, you know, be served for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Justice is for all, really, in its very nature. Rochelle, you're my last voice for this segment. In 60 seconds, probably even less, in your space, with your power and influence, how will you personally empower the next generation of Black people to walk upright and not shrink at the face of whiteness?
And what does the Lord require of you? I'm a Christian, and I'm a human first, as Derrick says, you know, to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. This we can teach everywhere and anywhere. We are not confined to space. In any place that you find yourself, be that light. In your community, if you see a family who needs extra support, who needs a mentor, whether it's a female mentor, male mentor, whatever it is, someone that can encourage their kids, and whatever it is, social justice doesn't have to be a march after a major crisis and tragedy. It is every day. And so if you can look and say, okay, where is the least fortunate? Who are the least of these in my circle? Everybody has something to give, and we have someone that we can support. So if we can just pray to seek out each other's humanity, to me, that's what we can teach everyone.
Yeah, that's probably the highest form, really. Humanity, right? To seek out each one's highest version of humanity and nurture that and cushion that as an equal human being. Thank you so much to everybody. Rochelle Davidson Mhonde, thank you. Maïgane Diop, thank you so much for being that voice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Derrick. Thank you, Jowhari. I do want to say, I have a little, this book over here. I'm not sure if you guys know it. It's called Why We March. And to everybody watching this clip, or will even see it later, it's interesting in terms of understanding the very nature of protests and not having to divert the value of protest to but people are looting. But you've got to understand why there is a protest, especially when
Right.
Black people are protesting. And that focus is pretty key because solutions can come out of that. I think you've been able to sum up, not the whole world, but certainly your vision as individuals in terms of how you feel in your space. And I hope some seeds will be planted. So thank you for joining, and continue doing the great work of influence in your spaces. Please be strong in the midst of the heaviness. As we say in South Africa, amandla. So yeah, you know.
Amandla.
Amandla.
Yeah,
That's
Amandla.
amazing. Thank you so
much.
much, Jabu.
All right.
Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.